Hello, QVS AP US History students. I hope you are having a wonderful day and welcome back to the course. We had a bit of a break and now it's time to get back to work. Our goal for the second half of this year is to get you ready for the AP exam that you will take in May. Hopefully you are ready to work hard toward that goal. And hopefully you use the time over the break to take the mock exam on the My AP College Board page. Because I think the more exposure you have to practice questions, especially ones that were designed by the College Board, the more comfortable you are going to be when you take that test in May. We are going to move on to Essential Unit 5 this week. As you are already familiar with the fact that there are 9 essential units within the context of the QVSAP US History course, and as such, we also have to then do a selective unit in order for you to gain full credit for the course. And the selective unit that I have open for you is the test preparation unit. So as long as you're doing those mock exams, essentially by the time we take the AP exam in May, after you take that test, you should be done with the course. So, but it's going to be a lot of work from now until then. The next few units are going to be very intensive. Essential Unit 5 covers the time period from 1844 to 1877. It's a very important time period within U.S. history. It includes the Civil War, the time that the country broke apart and spent 4 long years in a very bloody conflict, the bloodiest conflict in all of U.S. history. And it also includes the period immediately after the Civil War, which is the age of Reconstruction. So, how the country came back together and healed the wounds of war. However, a lot of historians argue, and the situation that existed for another 100 years after that war, those wounds weren't healed very well because Reconstruction in so many ways failed, and it catapulted the country into a period in history called Jim Crow, where the relations between the different races within the United States plummeted and took a long time for real political reforms to be made in order for relations to normalize. And that wasn't until like the 1960s, 1970s. And normalize is a strong word, especially if you're familiar with the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. So this is an important time period. As you see, I already talked about things in the 20th century. So many of the things that happen in this period in U.S. history have definite impact or legacy into the into the 20th century, and arguably even today, if you're familiar with the Black Lives Matter movement of the 21st century. So lots of implications from some of the major events that we are going to study within the context of this unit. So let me take you to the course page. Let me show you what you need to do in week 1 in order to be successful for Essential Unit 5. And let me reiterate that point that it is going to be a fast moving unit. And I will make that point after I open the unit page for you. So if we go ahead and scroll down, it's right here, Essential Unit 5. And as always, I have a map that outlines the unit. This unit will be open for 3 weeks. Now, in past units, I've given you like 4 or 5 weeks, but time is of the essence now, and we are going to have to move very quickly. You can see that it's a shorter time period also, but just because it's a shorter time period doesn't mean that it's less important. Like if you read my note down here, the College Board suggests that we spend about 17 class periods on the unit, and about 10 to 17% of the test will come from this period in U.S. history. Now, I mentioned the Civil War and Reconstruction. However, if you take a look at the map that I have as the introduction to this unit, you can see that it deals with the territorial growth of the United States up until 1853. So that's really the beginning of period 5 in AP US history. So in prior units, we talked about the Louisiana Purchase, and we took a look at the annexation of Texas. But within the context of this unit, one of the major events that led to the United States gaining a huge piece of territory in what is referred to in U.S. history as the Mexican Cession was a war with Mexico. So the Mexican-American War was fought between 1846 and in 1848 the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed, and as a result of that treaty, the United States gained a significant amount of land, California, Nevada, New Mexico, part of and Arizona, I'm sorry, and Utah. And these were important additions to the country, territorially speaking. And on top of that, they had made a treaty with Great Britain and gained what is referred to as Oregon country. So you could see that the United States expanded greatly from a territorial perspective. But one of the biggest problems, and I can relate this map to the outbreak of civil war, one of the biggest problems with territorial expansion was the expansion of the institution of slavery. So as new lands were added, slaves were then taken into these new territories, and it was hotly debated between Northern abolitionists and Southern slaveholders the extent to which slavery would expand into these new territories. So we'll be taking a look at some of the major compromises that were made within this time period, namely the Compromise of 1850. It dealt with how the question of slavery would be answered within the context of the Mexican Cession. And it also dealt with creating a very strong fugitive slave law that Southerners pushed for Northerners to enforce, because during this time period, significant number of enslaved people were escaping into the North via a network called the Underground Railroad. So we'll kind of get into all of these different topics as we explore this unit or this period in U.S. history from 1844 to 1877. Now, I would encourage you to click on the map, because again, clicking on the map, you'll get to listen to an overview of this time period, okay? And you can read through the unit overview, and you can take a look at the different reading assignments. The textbook chapter is outlined here in this note-taking template, okay, or this reading guide for you. So if you go ahead and take a look at that, you'll see what textbook pages align with it. And then as you scroll down and get to the different unit activities required for mastery, let's take a look or focus on week 1. Week 1 is going to deal with Western expansion. So it's important for you to learn how all of those different territories on this map above were added to the United States. Like, you should know, Florida was negotiated between the United States and Spain. It was the Adams-Onis Treaty that was signed in 1819, and essentially that land acquisition was peaceful. Same with Louisiana Purchase. So the United States purchased all of this territory in Brown from France in 1803. They paid us pretty insignificant sum, but again, this land acquisition was for the most part peaceful. And then we get into Texas and the Mexican Cession, where these land acquisitions were not so peaceful. So within the context of week 1, we are going to look at Western expansion and an important concept in American expansion called manifest destiny. In 1839, there was a newspaper man named John O'Sullivan, and he coined this term manifest destiny. And in coining the term, if you kind of think about what it means, essentially he made the argument that, or the claim that Americans were destined to expand across the continent and control the Western Hemisphere, that it was a God-given right for the American people to expand and control that land. And then that takes us to the first activity. It's a forum, and I'm going to have you listen to a very wonderful NPR podcast. It's an interview of an author named Robert Kagan. He wrote a book called Dangerous Nation. And in this little podcast that you're listening to, it's about 30 minutes long. You'll be able to hear his claim as to why he labeled the United States a dangerous nation. And he didn't mean today, he meant in the 19th century. And after you listen to his claim, I want you to participate in a forum here, evaluating the extent to which you think his claim is valid. And with all forums, although you guys haven't been very good at them, you should be responding to your classmates and the claims that they make. So you'll be introduced to this concept here, and then we'll move further through the week looking at Western expansion. You'll watch a crash course episode and become familiar with the annexation of Texas, which led to the Mexican-American War. We'll go a little bit further. I love this activity right here, so I'm going to open it. And talking about manifest destiny. It's illustrated by this wonderful painting here. So you're going to do a photograph or a painting analysis. You've done one of these before. In 1872, an artist named John Gass painted this. It's called American Progress. And there's so much to what manifest destiny really was within the context of U.S. history, illustrated in this painting alone. So you can even watch like a little video where the painting is explained to you. But I think if you really like divide it into 4 different quadrants, you can see what manifest destiny meant for the American people and what it meant for the other people who inhabited the land. So we'll be talking further about that concept, but using some art and imagery in order for you to understand the idea behind manifest destiny. You'll also do a reading by Howard Zinn. He has a chapter in his book called We Take Nothing by Conquest, Thank God. And it really deals with the Mexican-American War. And we'll take a look at all of those different territories that were added to the United States. And in this worksheet here, what you're going to do is talk to me about the extent to which you believed each of these different territorial acquisitions were gained through justified means. So perhaps you remember the activity we did with the American Revolution and how just that war was. I want you to kind of reconsider how just the acquisitions of all of these territories were in those same kind of like in that same guise. And then as the Americans expanded, again, there were compromises that were made over the institution of slavery. So you need to become familiar with those compromises. We already looked at the Missouri Compromise. But in this unit, you'll take a look at the Compromise of 1850, along with the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. And you'll see that with compromise came conflict, because I really make the argument that many of these compromises that were made over slavery were really acts of appeasement on the part of the Northerners toward the Southerners. And there were a lot of Northern abolitionists who were really angry about these compromises that were made. And at the end of the week, we'll take a look at one of them. John Brown was an American abolitionist, and some in history would argue that he is a hero, while others would argue that he is or was a terrorist. You'll learn about John Brown in this activity, and then you'll be able to participate in the forum, making your own claim, the extent to which you believe he was either a hero or a terrorists. So those are week 1 activities. Make sure you stay on top of them because again, this unit is only 3 weeks long. It is going to go fast. And if you fall behind at this point, you're going to have a difficult time really covering all of the content that you need to know for the AP US History exam that will be offered in May. Have a good week. Please contact me if you have any questions. I'm happy to help. I'm here for you and like to talk about U.S. history. So if you want to ask any questions, I'm open and ready to help you out. Have a good week.